Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of the AVSpeaksMusic podcast. It is the 8th of March, and I'm sorry. For the whole month of February, I was teasing you. I was like, oh yeah, next week we're going to get ourselves a guest. Did you get a guest? No. And then the next week, oh, well, it's going to be next week. If anybody's a troll at this point, it's me. But I came through. We pulled through. Today, I'm proud to announce that I have my first guest. Woo! Woo! And that guest is my good friend.
Who is it?
Mike Hardy.
Who is it? Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Yep, I go to school with Mikey. He is big music snob like me. Likes all the good tunes. So we're just gonna be sitting back. We're gonna be chilling. We're gonna be talking about some music that maybe you guys should go check out that we've been listening to that he wanted me to check out. Before we dive deep, let's just talk about what we've been listening to this past week. Mikey, what have you been listening to this past week, the past 7 days?
The past 7 days. Well, I'll tell you what I've been listening to. This past 7 days, we were on break. And everyone knows that during the stressful, awful, terrible school time, which is amazing. Wow, that was paradoxical. Anyway, you don't get as much time to sit down and really appreciate new music because I'm like you in that I can't listen to new stuff because if I do, I have to sit down and really, really think about it and appreciate it and see if I like it and see if it makes the cut, into my music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So over break, I have time to do that, and so I've been looking around, and I've been getting over the winter. I shift from my musical taste tends to shift from rock and blues rock, garage rock, and some grunge, and it starts to shift more towards the melancholy indie acoustic and like the really chill and like I'm so sad but it's okay and like guy with his guitar and it's really good. But I've been getting back into the blues slowly, and part of that is this artist called Shaky Graves, who I discovered over break, and I've become sort of obsessed because I watched not only listened to his albums but also watched some live things he did for Audio Tree on YouTube. And this guy, he has a kick drum made out of a suitcase, and a kick pedal that he sets up in the back of the suitcase with a tambourine. And he sits there with a guitar and he does his own percussion and he sings these fantastic, like really soulful, awesome bluesy ballads about just really good blues. But better than that, I went on to listen to more of his catalog, and he actually got a couple of guys who he played with a few years later that come with him consistently. So now he actually has a drummer and he has a rhythm guitarist, and they play a more blues rock style. So it's like everything that I could want and love, and he's super charismatic, which kind of makes me love him even more because one thing I do is when I like an artist, I read up on them, I read their history, and I watch videos of them and interviews, and this guy is hilarious, and I really, really like him as a person, so that helps a lot. I've really been obsessed with him. Also Fink, because ever since November, I've been kind of obsessed with Fink. It's really bad. So I kind of keep track of using Last.fm, great service if you don't use it, my listening habits. And Fink has become such an obsession for me that since November, he has skyrocketed to my number 3 most listened artist, which is saying a lot because I've been tracking who I listen to for the past 4 or 5 years.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
Yeah. It's become a really, really huge obsession. So now he's up there with the likes of the Black Keys and the White Stripes and Gregory Alan Isakov, and he's like, and the Broken Bells, and he's like in that list with them. But I've only been listening to him since November, and I've been listening to those other guys for like 3 or 4 years now. The Black Keys and Broken Bells longer than that, like 6 or 7. So it's significant the impact that he has had. So those are the 2 big ones that I've been listening to. Also worth mentioning, Nick Mulvey, pretty fun guy, another more poppy guitar act, and Alexander Wolf. Check those guys out too.
Nice. Yeah, usually when I hear an album that I really like, I will just listen pretty much to that album for an extended period of time and just overtake my listening habits. i.e. Colony House's Only the Lonely. I've talked about it multiple times on this podcast already, and I can't stop listening to it. I just actually bought it, so I actually own it now, so I've been listening to it even more. So that's pretty much that. And then, of course, I always go back to my faves, Reliant K, because I just can't get enough. And then I mentioned the band Hearts Like Lions last week. Super solid album that just came out. If you like alternative indie rock, just listen to it because it's fun. It's a good album. Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been listening to this past week. Nothing. I mean, I know all of you are just like, but Austin, the new Ed Sheeran album came out. Why don't you talk about Ed Sheeran? Wasn't it such a good album? Ed Sheeran's a big deal. Number one on the Billboard Hot 100 right now with The Shape of You. I mean, I think I will just talk about it briefly real quick. This new album, Divide, it is definitely his best album. I think it's his best album yet. And there's a lot of really fun tracks. I mean, if you just listen to the song Galway Girl, like super fun Irish folk type song, super fun. Like, everybody should listen to that song. Half of the album is really fun and upbeat, and then the other half of the album is just like, oh my gosh, I love you, and I'm Ed Sheeran, and I'm going to tell you with this sweet guitar. And I'm okay with that, but not for half an album. It just gets a little old. So, good album. I think it's his best album so far. But that's all I'm going to say about it. Maybe I'll talk about it more next week. But anyway. So, friend Mikey is on the podcast. I told him, so obviously we've been planning this for an extended period of time. I told him to give me 3 of pretty much his all-time favorite albums, and I would listen to them, and we will just talk about 3 of his favorite albums here on the podcast. And I will just say right out front, I've listened to the albums, I just haven't listened to them super, super recently. So if I'm a little fuzzy, Mikey's just going to just steal the show and talk about these albums. But, Mikey, why don't you just introduce one of these albums and tell me why it is one of your favorites?
Okay. Before I do that, I'll give a little background on why I chose the 3 albums that I did real quick. Okay. My musical taste sort of is in like this weird triangle that I kind of cycle through. And at the top of the triangle is the rock, where I listen to the blues rock and the indie rock and the garage rock and all of that. And on one side is sort of the alternative, like what I'm going to be talking. The first album I'm going to be talking about, the alternative, the more indie pop and the sort of indie electronic. And then on the other side is the super like hipster indie acoustic stuff that I'm talking about. So I tried to pick one album from those 3 separate genres that I listen to a lot of. And so the first one I'd like to talk about is the debut album by Broken Bells called Broken Bells. And this album was released in 2010, I think. I should know, but I think it was 2010. And, yep, it was 2010. And so Broken Bells is, if you're familiar with Hipster Darling and indie sort of icon and more alternative band The Shins, whom I also love. Mm-hmm. It's headed by James Mercer. And you may also be familiar with Brian Burton, a.k.a. Danger Mouse. He's a really well-known producer. He's produced some albums for Norah Jones, for the Black Keys. Most well-known for his work in being one of the 2 in Gnarls Barkley.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, you're learning things. And so they decided they had a mutual appreciation for each other's music, and they got together, said, hey, let's do something, let's make some music together. And what came out was some of my all-time favorite music that I've ever heard, and that's saying a lot. Like, there's a poster of it on my wall that you guys can't see, so I don't know why I'm mentioning it, but it's a beautiful poster, believe me. And so I really, really love this album.
Very nice. I remember I heard this band for the first time, like, Right, I think right around when I was starting to get into alternative rock, like 2011, 2012 ish, and the first song I heard was the song "The High Road," which is the opening track on this album, and
So, also arguably the best track.
I would argue that as well. It's just a fun. What I like about this is that like the album is like it's fairly chill as an album, but it keeps you engaged, you know. And yeah, so the first time I heard the High Road, I'm just like I can kind of dig this, but that was before I really was diving deep into the alternative scene. So I didn't like go and listen to this album, unfortunately. But yeah, I think when I listened to this album not too long ago, I think there was like one thing that just bugged me about this album, and I think the only thing was when I like listening to an album, I like cohesiveness as an album, and it felt like it just went from song to song to song with just like a little bit of a cut. It was like more of a collection of songs than like a full album, which is totally fine. It's just more of a personal preference than anything. But
That may have a lot to do with Brian Burton being primarily a producer, so he was likely trying to really experiment and do some really cool new things and trying to fit as much as he could into one album. I mean, that's my theory on why. And you're right, it's like it. But also, that sort of speaks to why it keeps you engaged while simultaneously being a very chill album. And so I'll just talk about The High Road real quick. The High Road, when people ask me what's your favorite song of all time, that song, my favorite song of all time changes every once in a while, as anyone who loves a lot of music does. But that song has probably come out of my mouth more than any other. And it is the song by which I gauge whether or not my friends have good musical taste. So we all have one, right? Don't we?
yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I have a friend and I figure out they like music, I slowly start letting them hear some of what I listen to. I slowly start listening to what they listen to. And eventually a friendship will come to the point where I show them The High Road by Broken Bells, and I'm watching carefully to see if they like it. And to this point, I've had a 100% success rate in showing people The High Road and having them say, this is a really great song. And it really is great. I mean, if you're talking about this as an album as a whole, yeah, it is a little disappointing that it's the first song because it's like right off the bat, this is the best song. There you go.
Yeah.
Now listen to the rest.
Right.
Yeah. But I want to make special mention of The Ghost Inside because it too took some time as my favorite song of all time.
Yeah.
And it was actually the first song I heard by them. And the one that led me to this album, and I don't remember how I heard it, but The Ghost Inside just starts with the bum 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 bum, and it's just like, this is a little strange, and then he starts singing in this falsetto right off the bat, and you're like, this is groovy, I can get into this, and you actually start listening to the words, and it's actually kind of a cool song about someone who's just like giving themselves up for giving up the ghost inside for money. And when you can understand what they're saying, I mean, the lyrics are pretty good, and that's sort of a James Mercer trademark, is when you can understand what he's saying, the words are pretty good. So.
Yeah, I get you.
But yeah, The Ghost Inside is my other favorite, and I actually love this was one of the first albums that I listened to, and I said, I legitimately love every single song on this album, because a lot of times, well, with the exception of Your Head Is on Fire, which I wasn't actually that huge a fan of, and still to this day I don't really ever listen to it at all. It's not that it's a bad song, it's just that in comparison to everything else, I don't really like it.
Yeah, I get you.
But yeah, every single song, with that one exception, is just great. I just really like it, and they are very different from each other, which also keeps it interesting. So I'm just laddering off real quick. If you're gonna listen to this album, start with The High Road, head to The Ghost Inside, listen to Vaporize, and
then just listen to the rest of the album. I mean, like if you're already that far,
you might as well finish. I'm just saying. But those are my top 3 out of this album.
Yeah. The High Road is just a really, really good song. I really enjoyed the song Vaporize too. That was a good song. Yeah. I mean, just listen to the album. It's a good album, man.
And one last thing about this. For some reason, albums are better when they have good art. I don't know what it is. But like, if you have a great album that has great art, suddenly it becomes an incredible album. And I really, really, really love the album art on this album. I think it's neat. It's just like this weird little pink disco ball thing floating in space. Like, what more could you ask for it?
Do you know if it has any like backstory to it, or?
I have no idea. I think the only reason that they chose it is because they were trying to go for a more spacey like sound, and it looks spacey. But there might be something behind it, but I just think it looks cool.
It does look pretty cool. Just look up like when you just look up the Broken Bells, this picture will probably show up right pretty close. Nice. So yeah, go check that album out. What's the next album that you have for us to talk about?
Okay. The next album that I am going to talk about moves into the rock category, if I can find it. And it's one that, of all of the albums I'm talking about today, this is the one you've likely heard of, you, the listener. The Black Keys are pretty big. They're pretty big.
Yeah, no, they're definitely getting pretty big at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So the album I'm going to talk about is by the Black Keys. It's Brothers by the Black Keys. And this album has a special place in my heart. I'm trying to pull it up here so I can get a better thing of it.
I actually think the first time I heard the Black Keys was what song is it? I know it's off of this album. Tighten Up. Yeah. Tighten Up. That was the first song I ever heard by the Black Keys, and I instantly fell in love with it. I mean, the music video is really charming. Have you ever seen the music video?
With the little kids fighting over the girl, and then yeah.
It's such a charming music video. I'm just like, this is, and then it's just great, like blues, just like nice rock and roll music. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at the track list right now. It's just so good.
It's so good. I have a funny story with how I found this album. The first track I heard, I was actually into a girl at this time. Long story. This was like 7 years ago. We've all done it. And so I was noticing that she liked this song by the Black Keys called "The Only One." I was like, all right, I'll check this out. And so I played it, and at this time I was into the Broken Bells and everything. And if you listen to The Only One on this album, it sounds legitimately nothing like any of the other songs. It's like an indie electronic weird ballad, and it's really, really, really good. But it's not the blues rock that the Black Keys are known for. That being aside, I heard this song and said, this is really, really good. And so I'm going to listen to the rest of this album. And boy, was I surprised. What do you know? They're a blues rock band, and a fantastic one at that. And actually, I grew to love them through that. And it's just kind of weird because this was the first time when I was really trying to aggressively work on my musical taste, like to a sort of fanatic degree that I've become to known. That you kind of know me. I work on this a lot.
Exactly.
It's a hobby.
It's a little bit of a hobby.
Yeah. And so this was like one of the first albums that I really latched onto and said, this is amazing. So I not only do I have that cute little story about it, the Black Keys album itself was sort of my introduction into a world of new music and what really let me step in. Tighten Up, probably, this is another one of those albums where my favorite song just switches all over the place.
Yeah.
But most often I'll say Tighten Up is probably my favorite. And it's also the one that most people have heard by the Black Keys, I think.
Yeah, Tighten Up, I either think that or before what.
Before El Camino.
Yeah, before El Camino, Tighten Up was definitely the song that everybody heard. Yep. Or I would probably argue Howlin' For You is also pretty big.
Yeah. Howlin' For You is also pretty big. But yeah, favorite off of this one, Tighten Up, The Only One, obviously. Sinister Kid makes me laugh whenever I listen to it.
Yeah.
The words, it's just about him trying to be like, hey man, I'm really bad. Like, you should totally be into me. And it makes me laugh. But and Too Afraid to Love You, She's Long Gone. So those would be my recommendations on best songs. Again, another album where every single song is fantastic. And again, I tried to pick albums where that was the case.
Well, yeah, of course. What was actually really funny, the first time you talk about The Only One being the song that you found first, listened to first. I actually, the first time I heard that song, I actually heard it through a cover. Yeah, and the cover is by, I've talked about the band on this podcast before, Run River North. They do, yeah, and it's just this like stripped back acoustic cover of it.
I have to hear this.
Yeah,
Now I'm the one learning things.
it's super. It might be hard to find. I don't know. Yeah, I'll definitely have to show it to you. But yeah, that's the first time I heard that song. But yeah, Tighten Up. I remember sitting at my house. I'm watching the VH1 music video countdown. They're like, here's a song called Tighten Up by the Black Keys. I'm just like, first of all, this music video is hilarious. Second of all, this song is like freaking awesome. So yeah. Also, another album with a great album art.
Yes. This is some of my favorite album art of all time. And this, you're going to notice a trend in the albums that I pick. The album art is always great because, like I said, album art takes a great album, makes it incredible. It literally it's just black, and it says, this is an album by the Black Keys. The name of this album is Brothers. And it's just that really, really dry, just sarcastic, hilarious humor that just really gets me, and I really love it. I want to get a big poster of it and just put it on my wall. I'm surprised I haven't already. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Great. While we're still talking about the Black Keys, I know I love the song Lonely Boy. I know it's not on this album. Have you ever seen the music video for Lonely Boy?
Yes! I was going to bring it up if you weren't. It's my favorite music video.
If you don't know this music video, it's literally just like an older gentleman, he's going to town with his dance moves.
And he's like doing motions to the song, and I don't know how they did it. I want to know. I don't need to know. In my head, they asked some guy, "Do you want to be in a music video?" And they played him the song and just had him dance, and it was the greatest event in music video production.
It looks like he's just in a truck stop.
It really, or in front of like on some street somewhere. Yeah. But he's really killing it. Oh he's going to town. It's a great music video. Highly recommended.
Yeah, I just had to side note that song. It's great.
But while you're talking about El Camino real quick, Little Black Submarines is my favorite Black Keys song of all time. And that one comes off of El Camino. But I just wanted to, before we move on, get into a little bit. Another thing that makes Brothers really cool is if you go back to 2006 to the big come up, and to other albums like Thick Freakness, it's literally just Dan Arbach and Patrick Carney with just really distorted guitar and drums. It's stripped down, straight blues rock, and it's fantastic. And around Attack and Release, which was the album before this one, they began to get more into the production side. And I consider Brothers to be the first time where they made this beautiful, perfect mix of production value as well as stripped down to the core rock and roll with just your distortion and your drums, and I think they mixed them perfectly on this album. And as time has gone on through El Camino and Turn Blue, which I don't hate but also isn't my absolute favorite, I'm not one of those people like, you gotta listen to the old stuff, man. Like, I really, really appreciate, because if you don't start changing your sound, people are gonna start getting sick of you. And actually, what is the one song on Turn Blue that was Fever? No, this is gonna bug me.
Doing some surgeon right on the spot.
Sorry, but yeah, there's one song on Fever that I really, really like.
Yeah, well, you go back and mention, I haven't actually listened to any of the Black Keys older stuff. Is it like super like sludgy?
Weight of Love is the one. And yeah, it is a little bit sludgy. If you listen to Thick Freakness, the title track on Thick Freakness, it starts off with feedback.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, it's just Dan Arbach going, it's really, 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 really sludgy, old-timey, like, roots rock and roll. And it's really good. But yeah, I find Brothers to be that perfect turning point when they started to really change their sound. And like I said, I'm not one of those people who's like, you gotta listen to the old. You do gotta listen to the old stuff, but like, don't only listen to the old stuff. Listen to all of it because it's all really good.
Nice. All right, one more album, and I'm gonna start off by saying that this album is probably the one I've listened to the most out of these 3 albums. I mean, I've listened to that Black Keys album before, and it's good. But like, you played this album for me. Oh, we have on our floor, we have a record player out in the lounge of our floor, and he bought this album that we're going to talk about on vinyl, which I will eventually start talking about vinyl on this show. But he just started playing it. I'm just like, this is really good. And like, I was really tired at that point too, so I'm just like, this is really good. Yeah, no. So what's the album?
The album we're talking about is Perfect Darkness by Fink. I've already mentioned Fink. I'm kind of obsessed with him and his soulful bluesy voice and driving acoustic guitar rhythms. And so this one, while not the sort of melancholy, like folksy acoustic that I'm talking about when I'm talking about like my cycles, this one sort of falls in between the blues and the more it's acoustic music, but it's more bluesy. But it's incredible. Yeah. It's fantastic stuff. And it starts off right off of the bat. This is an album where I legitimately love every single song on this album, and I could not tell you which one is my favorite. I can't tell you which one is my favorite because it changes every single day. And so it starts off with Perfect Darkness, the title track, which is just really, really amazing, and Fears Like Fire, and Yesterday Was Hard. I would just end up listing them all out for you. Because listen to them all, and listen to them in order. Because like you were saying, you were appreciating how an album can be cohesive. This is very much a cohesive album, I would argue. Yeah, no, this album flows really well. And like you're saying, every single song on this album is really, really good. And what I really appreciate about this album is that it's an album you can play in the background and you can just be all like doing your work or whatever. You don't even have to listen to it. It's just nice like doing work stuff. But when you finally like just listen to this album, there's enough interesting stuff going on. When it's just like pretty much one guy and one guitar, right? It's just one guy and one guitar. No, he's got a couple of friends. He's got a friend doing a bit more rhythm guitar. They're doing very, very more simple things, but it is 3 guys.
Yeah, okay. But it's pretty minimalistic.
It's very minimalistic, yeah.
Yeah. So like, but there's still like enough going on that it like really catches your ear, and I love the melodies on this album so much.
That's what does it. So when you're talking about being able to sit back and just listen to it, him and his 2 buddies, who again, when I say he has 2 friends, they're doing very minimalistic stuff. They're just adding a little bit to make it sound fuller. Yeah. Because as Fink sits there and does the driving of the song forward with his melodies and his like sweet. I guess technically it is repetitive what he's doing, but it's really, really cool. It's really well done, and it's perfectly executed. And I haven't actually heard people drive an entire song with this specific sort of acoustic guitar playing before, because he's not, and there's nothing wrong with strumming chords. But that's not what he's doing. He's sitting there and he's like hammering out this melody and driving this song forward. And it just sounds really, really great. It's really hard to describe. That's why I want you to go listen to it. I really want you to go listen to it. But the first song quick story of how I discovered this album. I have a tendency to, in my musical discovery, listen to one song by a whole bunch of artists, put them in a playlist, like, this is a good song, and then when I need to find more music, I come back to that playlist and be like, all right, so I liked this song by this artist, let's go listen to the rest of their discography. Fink and the song on this album, Warm Shadow, sat in my currently listening playlist for months. Because I don't know, I was in a different state in my music journey. I was looking through a lot of blues rock, I was looking for new grunge, and it came to the point where I was like, I just got to get something new. I need to switch it up a little bit. What is something in here? And I was scrolling through my music, and I saw the song Warm Shadow by Fink, and I was like, this is a pretty cool song. I like this song. I'm going to listen to this album. And nothing was ever the same. Nothing was ever the same. This album is incredible, and I can't believe that it took me that long to find it. And ever since last November when I listened through it, my musical life has changed drastically, and I haven't really found. I don't want to hype it up too much. Like, what Well, who am I kidding? They're gonna like it. Come on. Yeah, like come on. Like go listen to it. Also, fantastic album art.
Every you just got a knack for albums with good album art, man. Just come on.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, this is fantastic album art. And it's the reason that you were saying you can put it in the background is because of these driving acoustic beats. They're something that you don't necessarily have to pay attention to, but then once you turn your ear towards it and start listening to more, you realize there's some complexity there, and it's really, really, really cool stuff.
Yes, definitely. I would definitely. Well, okay. So I keep looking at the track listing, and there's just two songs that keep popping out of me, and it's the song "Wheels."
Yes, my favorite traveling song. Start traveling. Yeah.
It's just got the driving guitar, like it's like you're like going, you're like ready to go on like a trip. You're like, I want to get in my car right now and just go somewhere.
Yeah, it's a very, very accurately named song. And the song, if you listen to the words, it's about his musical career. He's like, when I first started traveling, I left old New York, and so I don't know why he says that, because he's from London. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I guess I haven't read enough about his history, but also a note: he only really tours in Europe, which makes me sad. So I don't know. I'm gonna get to see him live, but yeah, Wheels is. If you were gonna put a gun to my head or a microphone to my face and say, Mikey, please pick your top 3 favorites on this album, I would put Wheels in there. Probably Wheels, Perfect Darkness, and Yesterday Was Hard on All of Us, if you really made me do it.
Yeah, Yesterday Was Hard on All of Us is a good song. I also really like the song Fear Is Like Fire. Yeah.
Why are you doing this to me?
Like I just have the beginning of the song stuck in my head like right now. Yeah. It's this is one of those albums, like I listen to a lot of upbeat music, and like this has like a driving rhythm, so it's like sort of upbeat, but it's also super mellow. And this is one of those mellow albums where I can literally just put this on and listen to it whenever I want. And like it's out of the 3 of these albums, I would probably recommend this album out of all of them. I mean, you should listen to all of them, but like this is the one that I would recommend, Perfect Darkness by Fink.
I would agree, if only because the wide swath of musical taste of the people probably listening to this. You have to enjoy good rock and roll to enjoy the Black Keys. You have to like be a fan of the sort of produced electronic sound that Broken Pals get. Anybody can get into this album. It's a guy with a guitar, and he's doing these awesome beats that just sound great. And I really think that anyone can appreciate this album. It's really good.
And he's been traveling, so
yeah, he's been traveling.
So yeah, those are 3 of Mikey's favorite albums. I hopefully you are going to listen to these albums. Maybe you'll find a new favorite artist you want to listen to. Any last words on any of these albums before we end out the show?
I don't know. The only thing I can really say is I think I've really gone over everything that I can about it. But specifically, I've tried to pick albums out where every song on the album was something worth listening to. Yeah. And so do it. Yeah.
So do it. Yeah. So yeah, I just want to thank Mikey for being here and for doing this. I hope you guys liked me having a guest. If you enjoy me having a guest and you want me to have more guests, let me know. Maybe we can get Mikey back on the show sometime too. Yeah, I think that'll do it. Please subscribe to the channel. Also, you can follow me. I didn't do any plugs last week, and like as soon as I ended the podcast, I'm just like, I didn't plug anything. Whatever, I don't care. You can follow me on Spotify, just my name. You can follow me on Symbol. It's like Instagram, but for music. Okay. Mikey's just like, wait, what? Yeah, there's this app called Symbol. So if you think of Instagram, you post like one picture. With this, you can post one song. You can write a little bit about the song. It's pretty much just like, this is what I'm listening to at the moment, and people can like it and leave comments and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I want to try it now.
Yeah, no, it's
All right, so I'm gonna go check out Symbol. So you should too. Yeah.
it's fantastic. Is there any place where I think you mentioned last.fm where people can see what you're listening to?
Yeah, last.fm, or Spotify as well. I mean, if you find Austin, you could probably find me. Just look for who he's following, and I'll be in there. And Last.fm is weird for finding people because it's really hard to do. But if you want to really go for it, just type in last.fm/user albino cheese monkey CHZ instead of.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll type it in the description.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put it in the description. If you're really interested in what Mikey's listening to, you can keep up with what he's listening to if that's your style. And yeah, thank you again for being here, Mikey.
Thanks for having me. You're great, Austin, and you all know he's great, and he really deserves a lot more listeners because he's really been keeping up with this thing, and I really enjoy it, and I know you guys do too. So.
And I have a tear running down my face. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. And I'll catch you in the next podcast. Bye-bye.